A few months ago, I asked you to send in your wishlist items so that I could review it and let you know if it was a worthwhile purchase or not. Well, I'm finally back with round 2, and I thought this was really timely, especially with all the Black Friday sales on the horizon. I'm going to be coming from a place where I'm considering the perceived value for the price, so is it worth your money? What are the materials they've used? What does the fit or the cut or the object look like? How could you style it? Is there another alternative that might give you better value for your dollar? Are the proportions going to work? Maybe how the fabric will feel? You get the gist. So I'm going to dive right into it. I will link everything that I mention in the description box in case you want to go and check anything out, as I do have a few alternative recommendations I'll be making for some of the items that I've been sent in. Kicking things off with the very first item, the Babaa number 17 jumper in the color Dark Mist. Now when I saw this, I actually did a bit of a double take because I purchased this exact sweater 5 years ago and it's no longer in my wardrobe, and I'll explain to you why. But it's a really beautiful sweater and I can understand the appeal. Very oversized, turtleneck, so it kind of cocoons you, keeps you really warm, really slouchy sleeves and slouchy fit through the body. Now I really love the intention behind the brand Babaa, but I do think that there are some sweaters that are better purchases than others. If you have very sensitive skin, they're 100% wool undyed sweaters will be very uncomfortable to wear, and this was what my general experience was. I just had a baby and I found that I really didn't like the feeling of his skin against the knit and the knit against my skin. So the concept of how the fabric felt was ever present in my mind just because of that specific time in my life. And yes, you can definitely alleviate kind of the itchiness, the scratchiness of the wool by wearing a layer underneath, but I feel like with this particular style you're never going to completely negate it because of the collar detail. Now there is a difference between how their undyed and dyed knits feel. The dyed knits are remarkably softer and they're going to feel more comfortable against your skin, though they tend to be a lot more brighter, a lot less kind of in that neutral category. And if you're looking for something that is going to have that longevity and also just act as a bit of a quieter staple in your wardrobe, then that's probably what you're seeking out. The other thing I want to mention with the sweater is that it is one size only, so there's no variation in the sizing. It is what it is. So the fit is going to vary depending on your personal proportions and size. Now I do like the length, the fact that it is a bit longer and it covers the bum. It really cocoons the body, and the actual shape, I really like it. I think it's really fun. I do have to say I felt like a bit of a potato every time I wore it because on me it was just so ridiculously oversized and large. So those are my two major hesitations with this knit. I do believe they do a bit of a Black Friday sale or some kind of a sale, because when I bought mine it was during a discounted period and I got it for 200 euros, though 5 years ago I suspect they probably raised the prices a little bit due to inflation. Now I do think if those issues I mentioned are something that are going to bother you, you might like to seek out an alternative. And it's really important here to identify and highlight what it is that you like the most about the sweater. Is it the mock neck design? Is it the way that the wool hangs on the body, so that structure? Is it the really slouchy sleeves? Or is it just that you're looking for a relaxed, loose mock neck knit? So I want to share a few alternatives, some which kind of hit a few of those key points and some that hit a lot of them. First one is Almada label, and I think pricing wise this is around about the same price point, maybe just a little bit higher. This is a different blend. It's a wool and cashmere blend, so you're going to find that it has a bit of heft to it, but it also has a really beautiful drape, and I've only heard good things about their knitwear. Perhaps the closest iteration, though definitely a lot thinner, is from Facade Pattern, and this is my personal favorite Korean brand. I just love everything they do. My entire wardrobe could be Facade Pattern. I think I'd be very happy. Now this only comes in 2 different sizes, but based on the model imagery it looks incredibly oversized, so I think it's a very generous fit. This one is 100% natural fibers, but it's a blend of wool and alpaca, so I feel like that's going to be really cozy, though I can only see it in this charcoal grey. W concept functions a little bit like Farfetch, so the items ship directly from the brand, but it's kind of an aggregator of all of the different Korean brands, which is pretty neat. So that's the second one. Then I was looking on the Lily Silk website website and I found one that kind of has that oversized slouchy fit but with a much more intense collar. This one's in a merino wool, so going to be really nice and warm, and it's got some pretty details to it as well in terms of how it's been knitted. If you're after a punchier color, navy gray have a really stunning funnel neck knit. This is slouchy through the body but really slim through the sleeves, so it's going to be a little bit easier to scrunch those up, so it's not going to overwhelm, particularly if you're someone who is more petite. I had a couple from Sisterhood to recommend which kind of give the vibe vibe, but they do have nylon blended in. So if it's natural fibers you're seeking out, then these might be irrelevant. But the first one is the Eloin knit, which has this beautiful cable knitted design, and this has alpaca, wool, and then nylon. And then the other one is called the Haley knit, and I really love the Marle design of this particular style. It also looks to be a little bit more cropped, so again, better for petites. Anyway, that is just my 2 cents on the Babaa knit jumper, but if you've ever wondered why I decided to part ways with mine, now you have your answer. Marle is a good New Zealand brand actually that do very, very similar styles, so they're coming into spring summer edits now, so you might have to wait until next year if you want to try and get your hands on one of them. Next one is the Gucci or Celine belt, and please do not be offended when I say this, but just don't buy the Gucci belt, please. If you had it in your wardrobe before and you loved it, that is great. But to me, I'm someone who tends to prefer more of a quieter approach to fashion. And so this is my personal lens here. I'm really projecting, but I don't really love the double G logo. To me, it feels quite kind of in your face. It's very shouty. And while it had a really long trend cycle when it first was popularized many years ago in the kind of early to mid 2010s, we are experiencing a much faster trend cycle now. So if you add it into your wardrobe, you're probably going to end up finding yourself tired of it or kind of regretting it in the near future. The Celine belt, on the other hand, this is a really expensive belt. I mean, both of them are, they're designer belts, but that's kind of what you're buying into, right? This to me is probably the better choice of the two, because the Celine logo is recognizable only if you're someone who is interested in these luxury brands. For most people, they're not really going to know what it is. It's just going to look like a brand logo and doesn't feel as overbearing as the Gucci double G Marmont belt does. That's just my personal opinion. I don't think that you necessarily need to even buy a designer belt, though the Celine one is very nice. You could also do something from a brand like Anderson's, who do really, really beautiful high quality belts, which are a fraction of the price. Like technically you could buy 3 belts from Anderson's for the same price of 1 from Celine. And I feel very strongly that you get to a point with designer goods where the increase in price doesn't actually match the increase in quality. So those mid-tier brands often are delivering very, very similar quality to that of a designer brand. So a lot of what you're paying for obviously is the luxury and the prestige attached. And sometimes that's just something you crave, you covet it, it's inexplicable, and you know that it's expensive for what it is, but you still really want to have it. And having that in your wardrobe, wearing it every day will bring you joy, and it's just what you're after. So if that's the case, I reckon go for it. But obviously there are many, many alternatives. Just please don't do the Gucci belt. Next one is a bag, the Toteme T Lock clutch. And this is so interesting because I was styling a client yesterday and she had 5 of these in her wardrobe. I mean, she had the most incredible wardrobe I've seen, and they were all in different colors. And clearly it is a bag that is really, really working for her. I have not seen this in the flesh, so I can't really speak to the functionality. I've only seen reviews and seen people say that they regret buying it. And I highly implore you to just do some deep dive, some research into those who have had this bag, because it feels very specific to me. I think maybe the intent here, the idea, what you're seeking out is the aesthetic and the way that it looks. The T-lock detail is really neat, and I believe it comes with a crossbody strap too, so you could technically wear this as more of a casual bag, but be pairing it with things that are a bit more slouchy just to add in that visual balance against a more structured silhouette. I was also very happy to see this bag has feet, so when you're placing it down on a surface, it's not scratching the leather, so the bag is protected, especially when you're paying that kind of price. You really want to look after it. I do think that this leather is probably going to be more prone to scratching though, depending. There are a few different variations, but I'm looking at the smooth leather option. I really like the suede interior lining. This feels very luxurious, very premium. I think it's a really gorgeous baguette style bag, though I will say I personally have not been overly excited by the Toteme bag that I bought, and I don't know if this is just a me thing or the bag thing or me plus the bag thing, but I did just want to mention it. And I don't know if anyone else has had a similar experience, so please do share in the comments if you have. But I mean, it's not ruling out ever looking at their bags in the future, but more so I think maybe I might have bought the wrong bag for me, and you always hate to have that experience happen, especially with something that is very expensive like this. Anyway, I'm going to stop waffling. Enough about me, let's move on to the next one, which is actually not a fashion item. It is Luggage from July. Now, I have a July suitcase, coincidentally. It's one of their carry-on styles, which comes with the power bank, though I can't say I've ever used this. I always take a charger with me, so I'm going to be using the charger over the power bank. So I tend to remove that. I think if you check the bag as well, you have to take the power bank out. I can't remember, but I know there's some very specific rules around this. I really like my July suitcase. Mine has been used so many times and it's held up incredibly well. It's the one that I really like to take when I'm traveling overall. I've got a kind of pinky colored one. I think it's a really good suitcase, and actually I much prefer it to the Samsonites that I've bought over the years. So that's kind of my take. I think you wouldn't be disappointed. I think they're actually, yeah, very, very good quality suitcases, assuming that the bar hasn't lowered since I got mine many, many years ago. Okay, woman after my own heart, because my favorite shoe brand is on here, Aeyde, the Agata boots. Now, first thing I noticed when I was looking at these, because I was trying to see what variations there are, they only come in suede. Now, suede is definitely a high maintenance material. You really should be putting some sort of protectant onto the suede before you wear them, especially if you opt for a lighter color, because they're prone to getting marks, getting dirty, grubby, and it can be a real pain to clean. I in the past have actually taken suede shoes into the cobbler to get cleaned, because they'll do a really, really good job and make sure that the colouring is consistent throughout, as you can end up with patches if you're doing it on your own and you don't know what you're doing. Though not to say that it isn't possible and you can't do it. Of course you can. Now, I love Aeyde boots because I feel as though just by sheer coincidence, they're very suitable for those who have wide feet. The leathers they use are so supple, they're just so beautiful, they stretch out so nicely, and the designs are phenomenal as well. I think they're shoes that are designed for women who really love shoes, but also love something that is going to be classic and endure. I really love this style. I think it's a very good version of a classic design. I like the fact that you have the gusset, so you've got that stretch to get your foot in and out of the shoe, but then the suede is actually sat in between those panels, so it kind of stretches out a little bit, but you have this very seamless finish. The fact that the heel is in a different color and it's a nice block heel, so very sturdy, very walkable. It has a slightly higher shaft, so you're not going to have cold ankles. It's really going to bridge that gap between your trousers or your skirt if you're wearing a longer one and your feet. And on the price, this is probably the only thing that I think is a bit on the high side. Definitely quite expensive. They're tracking in at 900 Australian when I'm looking on their website, and I feel like their shoes have just jumped up in price, because I remember years ago you could get the knee-high boots for far less than that, around maybe $750. So I would definitely be hanging out for these to go on sale. I definitely think you can find very similar options at a much lower price point. Nelson Made is a brand that definitely comes to mind, though their shoes are far more suited for those who have a regular or narrow foot as opposed to someone who has a wide foot. I'd also be recommending A. Emery as well, which is another Australian brand, as they do very, very similar shoes to this. And I've had quite a good experience with their shoes as someone who does have wider feet. But listen, if you've got the money, the budget, and you want to splurge on them, I would go for it. I don't think you'd regret it. Great style, great shoe brand, and I'm sure they're going to be really comfortable. I don't know if I'm meant to be de-influencing you or not, but all right, this next one, I have to admit, is something I tried. I coveted it for a while, and I tried it on and it looked dreadful on me. It's the Harris Tapper Tilmens blazer. Now, Harris Tapper is a New Zealand brand, and I really have to question what their markup is. I was talking to one of my girlfriends about their clothing and the fact that I was disappointed that I'd bought a coat from them, which was 100% wool, and I expected for $900 that it would be made in New Zealand, and it was made in China. And I just said to her, honestly, what is the markup on this? It's got to be, you know, 5 times, 6 times. You could easily manufacture that in New Zealand, maybe have a slightly lower markup, and that jacket sold out so quickly. And listen, I really love their designs. I'm always looking at their new collections, so it's not about that. It's just more, I really wish as a New Zealand brand that they had gone that extra step to support local, as that's something that is important to me. But we also have to acknowledge the fact that some of the best manufacturing in the world actually comes from China. Anyway, back to the item at hand, the Tilmens blazer. You've probably seen this before. It is a collarless jacket that has buttons up the front and then a curved hemline. Now, this is a very, very boxy jacket, and if you're someone who is very broad across the shoulders, it's only going to serve to highlight that and And if you're someone who has a longer torso, it's also going to cut you off in the wrong place. And it means that whatever you wear on your lower half, you're going to have to be quite intentional with it. The other thing is that it's a bonded satin, so it's not very easy to care for, especially at that price point. You have the added cost of continual dry cleaning. So if you're not someone who regularly gets clothes dry cleaned, it may be something that you put off wearing because you know that's going to be an additional task for you to have to undertake that goes outside of your usual scope. I feel like someone I've seen wear this a lot is Sarah Crampton, and she looks incredible in hers, so definitely really sells it to you, though I know my proportions are very, very different to hers. She's definitely got far longer legs than I, so shorter torso, which is why those proportions work much better. I did want to recommend actually a more affordable version. So it doesn't look anywhere near as luxurious, you know, it's not that high quality bonded satin, but it does give you that same sort of a look, that same vibe for less. It's from Dish, though I do think you need a size down because I've seen this on a few people and I suspect they've gotten their usual size and it just looks like there's a bit too much fabric. That's my take anyway. I'm really sorry if I've offended anybody. I don't mean to, because if you love the way something looks on, then that's really all that matters. But I do think that could be a good option, a good way to kind of trial it out as well, if you're not 100% sure, or you don't want to commit to that price tag and the constant need for dry cleaning. All right, we have another lifestyle thing, country road sheets. Okay. I cannot rave enough about country road sheets. I talked about them in my little luxuries video, which I'm going to link in the cards up here. They're some of my favorite sheets that we have in our house. I think country road home in general is so underrated. People aren't talking about it enough, which is probably a good thing because then stuff doesn't sell out. I tend to wait for their spend and saves so that I can really maximize my dollar, but I'm also happy to buy their bedding and their towels as well, which are really good, full price. We have two sets of their sheets. So we've got the cotton ones and then we've got the linen ones, and both are beautiful, wash really well, haven't had any issues with holes. The cotton is really sturdy and durable, but also feels quite soft against the skin. We also have one of their duvets, and then my son has sheets for his bed and my daughter's got one of their sort of textured cotton duvet covers. So clearly a big fan of their bedding in this house, and I try quite a lot of brands and a lot of really iconic Australian brands, and they're kind of up there as one of my favorites. Next we have an item from another New Zealand brand, Marle, and this is the Calla cardigan. So it's 100% cotton cardigan that has an open knit design. Now the instant that I searched this, I was thinking to myself, where are we wearing this? Because anything that's kind of knitted, it to me feels very kind of casual. It feels like something that we're exclusively wearing to the beach as opposed to something that we're wearing every day. I think that these sorts of cardigans are a lot more challenging to integrate into our everyday wardrobes in a meaningful way, in a way that feels natural and organic because of that netted finish. This is just my personal opinion, and maybe it comes down to my biases on how I would style this, but that is going to be my main limitation with this cardigan. I mean, I think you could do some fun things if you're maybe wrapping it across the body or you're wearing it as part of a tonal look. And perhaps a large part of these emotions I'm feeling come down to the e-commerce styling, because it's paired with a bikini and a pair of shorts. You can visibly see what's on underneath, and that to me leans very heavily into that resort wear kind of category. So if you're thinking about wearing something like this just for the beach, it's going to give you some good coverage. It's cotton, so it's probably going to feel really nice. I mean, I really love Marle clothing. I think it's beautiful. I like the V-neck design. It draws the eye downwards, so that type of neckline is suitable for everybody. And it doesn't look too generous, too oversized. You've got a slim, relaxed fit through the sleeve, which is nice. It's not too tight, so it doesn't feel, you know, unbalanced in any way. And I think that the fact that it doesn't have a hem at the bottom too, that is interesting, but also a very chic and subtle detail that makes this a better choice than something that did have a ribbed hem. So that's where I'm at. I feel like 50-50. It's 320 Australian dollars too, which is pretty pricey for something that you might not be wearing a lot. So just another note of consideration to think about. Next we have the Rylan Satchel Bag, and I believe this was the bag that the brand launched with. I know people who have this and who absolutely adore it. I think it's a really chic, modern take on the doctor's bag, that big buckle on the front. I have seen and experienced their bags in person before, and they really are very, very luxurious feeling, really beautiful quality, lovely leathers. It is more of a smaller size, so something that you're just going to be fitting the essentials in, very structured, a little bit more of a higher price point, but I think definitely the value is in that you're getting a premium product. And I often feel like it's bags that fall within this price range that really do deliver on impact far more so than any designer bag ever could. So I think really beautiful, and actually for the woman who asked about the T Lock clutch, maybe this could be another alternative that you consider, though it feels more like an everyday bag as opposed to an evening appropriate option. Okay, next we have a bag from Oleada, the Marina Carry All. And it was interesting because when I googled this, the first bag that popped up in the advertising was the Row Astra bag. So there's definitely kind of a link in terms of the style, the vibe there. Now, this comes in 2 different sizes, and I'm not sure which specific size you were looking at, whether it was the regular or the mini. The mini feels a little bit more trend-led personally, kind of like a Miu Miu bowler bag, whereas the large size, I can really see a lot of value in the functionality. The fact that it transforms into a backpack, I mean, you know, Oleada do this sort of thing really well. And this is definitely something to be fun for work if you wanted something that wasn't overly structured or that just felt a little bit less traditional. It also does fit a 14-inch laptop too, which is nice, particularly if you need to carry that with you for your commute. But Oleada bags are really lovely. My mini anchor bag is definitely one of my personal favorites from the brand, and I mentioned that in my bag review part 2 over on my Substack. I'll link that down in the description box if you'd like to go and have a read. It is behind the paywall, but so detailed. I go into a lot of information about all of my bags. I'm slowly working my way through every single one that I own. So I think a good resource if you've been eyeing anything up. But yeah, I think that's a great option. They are going to be doing a Black Friday sale too, which hopefully should be live around this time. So if you're thinking about it, it would be a good time to buy it. A girlfriend of mine actually totally independently came across the brand, and she ended up buying their duffel, and she's only had good things to say about it. So I think that speaks volumes too. Anyway, Marina Carry All, I think it's nice. Definitely other options out there that are going to be at a lower price point, but I do feel like Oleada kind of bake a lot of those functional aspects into their bags for the working woman, the busy woman with a lot on her plate who wants her bag to work with her rather than against her. At least that's kind of my take anyway. And we're going to end with one final bag, which is from an Australian brand, Vestirsi, and this is the Bella Bag. Now, there seems to be a big push behind this bag. When I went on their website and I was kind of clicking around, they have a dedicated link just to this bag, which says to me they've probably got a lot of stock, but also they're putting a lot of marketing spend behind it. So I'm wondering if you saw someone promoting this bag, someone who's been gifted it, maybe some UGC that they're using in their marketing, that kind of made you feel compelled to think about it a little bit more. I'd love to know actually. Can you tell me if you're the person who asked about this item in the comments? I think that this is a really pretty bag. I like that it's functional, that it can be worn a couple of different ways. The woven leather is really nice. My only thing with woven leather like this is unless you can touch it in your hand, it's really hard to tell from an image whether or not that the edges are going to fray with consistent wear and tear. So that's not something I can actually give you any assessment on just based on an image. I do have a bag from Vestirsi, and the leather quality is really beautiful, especially the price point. I feel like they're kind of over delivering in that aspect. They're really quite soft leathers, really supple, and that in of itself feels really luxurious. I do feel like if you wanted that woven look, something that is probably going to wear better over time would be something like the Margot woven baguette. Now this actually has kind of more of a finish on the edges of the woven leather pieces, but it is a completely different vibe. It is structured as opposed to slouchy, so it feels a little bit more refined, a little bit more polished than the hobo bag does. So that's kind of a consideration point. But they do have another hobo that when I went on the Nothing to Wear podcast, Lee mentioned it as one of her recent purchases that she was absolutely thrilled with. And she either had the Eden or Serena, which is their slouchy hobo that's a little bit more simple. It doesn't have that dual functionality, I don't believe, but does come in the 2 different sizes and many different finishes and colors. So I think that could maybe be a better choice from a longevity, wear and tear standpoint, but just gives you a few options. I mean, my personal favorite on their website, I think right now has to be the Jamie tote, and not because it's my name, but because it reminds me of the tulip tote from the Lifner, but perhaps a little bit more commercialized, a little bit more watered down, you know, practical for every day, and the leather looks like it's really durable. And that's the last one that I had to chat with you about today. I feel like I was very mixed on the scale. Some things very emphatic about, and others a little bit more reserved and conservative. But I hope that this really gave you some food for thought and where I personally am coming from when I'm thinking about adding anything into my wardrobe, especially items that are at that higher price point. There are so many factors that go into our actual purchase, and sometimes we get caught up in that we forget to think about other details that might impact our use of the item. So thank you so much for spending some of your day with me, for watching this, and I hope that you found it interesting, you got some valuable insights and maybe just some consideration points to think about for some upcoming purchases of your own. If you do have any other wish list items that you want to share down in the comments, maybe I can try and leave you some short answers to those. Thank you so much for being here, for watching, for spending some of your day with me. It always means a lot. And if you're new here and you'd love to see more videos like this, I'd love for you to subscribe. I share a lot of brand reviews, how to make the most of your wardrobe, and styling advice. I hope you have the most beautiful week ahead. You'll probably see me a few more times than usual this month, so do keep an eye out as I have a few bonus videos planned, and I'll see you very soon with the next one. Thanks for watching. Bye.